Good morning.
Well, good morning, and thanks. And the technical problems apparently are on this end. I guess this internet line it's commercial, contracted out locally, and so there's a problem with apparently the switch in downtown Baghdad. So that's why we had to switch to telephone, so forgive me, Pentagon Press Corps. Well, I've got a few remarks here that I'll work through, and then we'll get to some questions. So good morning, Pentagon Press Corps. During his visit here on Monday, Secretary of Defense Ash Carter announced 5 new accelerants which have been approved by the President and coordinated with the government of Iraq. These accelerants are, number 1, authority to place additional advisors with Iraqi security forces at the brigade and battalion headquarters level. Number 2, authority to employ attack helicopters in support of operations to retake Mosul. Number 3, we will employ HIMARS in support of operations to retake Mosul. Number 4, we will provide financial assistance to the Peshmerga. Number 5, lastly, we will increase the force management level from 3,870 to 4,087. We are still working on the specifics of these accelerants, and we'll keep everyone updated as our plans develop. Now, on to operations. On Sunday, U.S. forces conducted a raid which targeted Suleiman Abed Shabib al-Jabori, one of ISIL's military emirs and an ISIL War Council member. Al-Jabori's removal will degrade ISIL's leadership network and impact their ability to coordinate attacks and defend ISIL strongholds. Last week in the Euphrates River Valley, Iraqi security forces tore HIT from ISIL's grasp and gave it back to the Iraqi people. HIT is liberated. During Operation Desert Lynx, thousands of fleeing citizens sought safety behind CTS forces, highlighting the effectiveness of the Iraqi security forces and the trust they have earned from the Iraqi people. HIT was a linchpin for ISIL. Clearing it hampers their ability to move foreign fighters and supplies into the Euphrates River Valley and sets the stage for future offensive operations. The liberation of HIT will serve to further fragment ISIL's operations in the Anbar corridor. A key point to emphasize is the close coordination between the Iraqi Army, CTS, and Sunni tribal forces. During the HIT clearance, 60 Abu Isa and al-Shamal fighters, along with Iraqi Army field engineers and one scrappy tank, worked side by side with CTS to clear IEDs and relocate evacuating civilians to safe areas. The operational achievements we're seeing are a direct result of our commitment to train and equip our partners. For example, in Anbar province, coalition advisors are professionalizing more than 100 Sunni tribal forces in a boot camp style course. This is important because it's the first time tribal instructors taught the curriculum themselves. By helping tribal fighters establish their own training program, we're setting them up to secure long-term stability in the region. In the Tigris River Valley, which, if the map is deployed, is the blue circle on your map, it's still a tough fight. The ISF repelled several coordinated attacks consisting of vehicle-borne IEDs, suicide vests, indirect fire, and small arms fire. Iraqi security forces continue to consolidate and improve their defensive positions while continuing to increase their combat power. To the north and the west, the Peshmerga continue to hold the forward line of troops in their sectors. Earlier this month, the U.S. Air Force deployed the legendary B-52 Stratofortress bomber into theater. The B-52 is a long-range heavy bomber that can perform a variety of missions, including strategic attack, close air support, air interdiction, and maritime operations. On Monday, this iconic platform conducted its first mission against an ISIL weapons storage facility in Kiara, Iraq. I have a video of this mission, but I don't know that we have video capability right now, so we'll make sure that video gets posted online. Now let's move on to Syria, where we continue to see vetted Syrian opposition and ISIL clash along the Mara line. The Syrian opposition has made gains, but so has ISIL, in what has developed into a shoving match over the Manbij pocket. We will continue to pressure ISIL, but we expect them to fight hard to hold their ground. In Shadadi, the SDF continue improving positions along the forward line of troops. In preparation for future operations, the SDF recently graduated their first basic training class of 200 Arabs. These Arabs joined the SDF during the Shadadi offensive itself. This unilaterally run training course is one example of the SDF working to incorporate Arabs into their ranks. Finally, I'd like to highlight the efforts of Captain Bradley Grimm. Captain Grimm is a United States Army officer who was recently awarded the Danish Defense Medal for Special Meritorious Effort. Captain Grimm provided actionable intelligence about a bomb threat against a school in Denmark. The information he provided helped to foil the plot and resulted in an arrest and the confiscation of explosives. Brad's work likely saved the lives of Danish citizens. I've got a photo of Brad. I don't know if we've got the ability to show it. But Captain Grimm is a soldier assigned to the CJTF here. He's based out of Al-Assad. And his work had a direct impact in Europe. So we're proud of him. We're proud of the guys.
We do have the photo up. Thanks.
Okay, great. So there you see the photo. That concludes my prepared remarks. And with that, Bob, if you're in there, I'll take your question.
Yeah, we'll start with Cammie.
I just have one quick question. Where was the B-52 mission on Monday?
It was in Kiara, Iraq, which is that's part of the Operation Valley Wolf. So it's a little bit east. Excuse me, it's a little bit west of Makmur. It's just on the west side of the Tigris River from Makmur. Yeah.
Can you maybe spell that for us?
I can. Stand by. I got to find it. So we spell it this way. Quebec, Alpha, Yankee, Yankee, Alpha, Romeo, Alpha, Hotel. If you don't know your phonetic alphabet, you need to learn it if you're going to work in the Pentagon.
What was the target again?
It was an enemy weapons storage facility, and we'll have that video posted up here. In fact, I guess it'll be on the CJTF YouTube page, and I'll tweet it out as well.
What type of weapons did they have stored there?
I don't have the specific details. Most of these weapons of this particular target, primarily in these storage facilities, what we see is a combination of some of their indirect fire capabilities. So they'll put what they refer to as hell cannons. These are their homemade indirect fire weapon systems. They'll mask those ahead of distributing them out. Sometimes they'll be VBID, the fundamentals of VBID. So they're homemade explosives. They're truck bombs that are not completely finalized yet. They'll go there for final assembly and then eventual deployment.
Thank you.
Okay, Joe Tabbitt.
Just to follow up on Cammie's question, could you elaborate more on the significance of the B-52? Do you know if this type of aircraft would be used in the operation in Mosul and Raqqa? Also, do you have any concerns that the use of the B-52 could cause civilian casualties, for example? If you could elaborate on that. Thank you, sir.
So the B-52s really are replacing the B-1s that had been flying here for almost a year. They have largely the same capability, and in some cases a little bit more of it, right? So they can carry a heavy payload. They conduct the same level of precision, which is why I really wanted to show you the video. I know there are memories, you know, in the kind of the collective unconscious of B-52s decades ago, doing very sort of less discriminate, arguably indiscriminate bombing. I guess that's where the phrase carpet bombing originally came from, back in the linebacker days. Those days are long gone. The B-52 is a precision strike weapons system, weapons platform, and it will conduct the same type of precision strikes that we've seen for the last 20 months here in this theater. So it is simply a replacement for the B-1. Obviously, the B-52 does have a long and very illustrious history, so we do like to talk about it. But really, it's simply another platform from which we can launch our precision strikes.
Okay, Tom.
Yeah. Hi, Colonel. Tom here from AFP. Earlier on, you referenced along the Mara line some gains that ISIL has made. And can you talk a bit more about these ISIL gains? And there was a report yesterday that ISIL now controls a neighbour, a previously government-controlled neighbourhood in Deir el-Zor. Anything on those gains?
So what you've got in the Mara line area has become a fairly kind of fluid and dynamic fight. For months, the Mara line had kind of become very stable. This was trench works. In many, I saw some of the overhead. It looked, in some cases, like a World War I battlefield. Very stable, very static. Trench works on both sides. Two groups of forces just sort of staring each other down. Recently, the moderate opposition began some maneuvers, provided some devastating air power in support of that, and we started to see the Mara line become a little bit more fluid. So that's what you're seeing now. So there are several towns in this, and town is almost too generous, village really. There are several villages in this area, on the Mara line that have changed hands multiple times over the last several weeks. So we'll see some friendly force maneuver, and the enemy will withdraw from the town. Maybe there'll be a gunfight. Maybe it'll just be maneuver. And then maybe it'll get cloudy, and so that'll limit our ability to provide air power, and we'll see the enemy then retake that town, either through maneuver only or sometimes with fires as well. So it's become a very dynamic battlefield. I think right now, and I've seen some press reporting that in our view assigns more significance than is deserved to individual towns being taken or lost. And again, the term town is probably too generous. These are villages. So what you're going to see, we believe, for some time now is this kind of fluid, dynamic back and forth. That's why I picked that phrase "shoving match" very deliberately, because that's what we see. The VSO will kind of shove ISIL, and they'll go back a few steps, and ISIL will come and they'll shove the opposition back a few steps, and that's what we have right here in the Mara line. We're going to continue to provide support. We're going to continue to encourage opposition forces there to press that fight. We believe it's important. The Mara line is the western boundary of the Manbij Pocket. The Manbij Pocket is the last open channel between Turkey and Syria. So if we can close off that Manbij Pocket, in other words, push the Mara line east to where they can link up with the Euphrates River, east to the Euphrates, we will then have sealed off the final line of communication, supply line between Turkey and Syria. And we think that's important because that's where a lot of the foreign fighter flow comes in. That's where a lot of the illicit items move in both directions. So we think it's important to seal that off. In Deir ez-Zor, what you have, there's one, I guess Deir ez-Zor city, one portion of the city that the regime forces never lost control of. And so we're seeing continued maneuver for that final portion of Deir ez-Zor city. And we're talking a matter of blocks in this case. So again, way too early to make any, to assign too much significance to this very tactical work that's going on in Deir ez-Zor City.
Sorry, just to follow that, you haven't changed your assessment. I think the figure that you given previously was that ISIL has lost 10% of the Syrian land that they once had. Is that still the same?
You got to speak up, man. I can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry. So these small gains haven't changed your assessment in terms of the percentage of territory that you have retaken from ISIL. I think previously you said it was 10%.
Right. So we've been at kind of 15 to 20% for some time now. But what you're seeing up in the Mar-a-Lago area won't be enough to even move that percentage point in any direction.
Thanks.
Bill?
Hey, Steve. Kind of a quick question on Russian movements and actions inside of Syria. What percentage, can you give a sense of what kind of activity they're up to right now? How much of it is targeted at Islamic State or, Nusra? And, and give a sense of what is their kind of firepower in the country. I don't know how many weeks after their supposed withdrawal.
Well, when the Russians first came in, they claimed that they wanted to fight ISIL. And in reality, only a small fraction of their strikes were against ISIL. About 80% of their strikes were against the opposition. Since the cessation of hostilities was declared, we have seen that shift. At one point, the Russian primarily had been striking ISIL. At one point, I think, in the last, week or so, the Russians, we estimated, really more than 70% of their strikes were against ISIL. So I don't have today's figure, and we don't track it, that closely. But the Russians have been, striking either ISIL or, in many cases, Nusra. That said, we have seen an uptick, a general uptick in the number of ceasefire or cessation of hostilities violations. We have seen an uptick in the violence, primarily regime elements coming into contact with other forces. So this is a concern to us, and we've called on the Russians several times to use their influence with the Syrian regime to try and tamp this down.
And do you believe at this point that they're preparing for an end to the ceasefire? Does it look that way from their positioning?
Well, I'm not going to predict that. I don't know what their intentions are. What I do know is that we have seen, regime forces, with some Russian support as well, begin to mass and concentrate combat power around Aleppo. So this is something that we're concerned about and something that we're keeping an eye on. That said, it's primarily al-Nusra who holds Aleppo. And, of course, al-Nusra not part of the cessation of hostilities. So it's complicated. We're watching it. Our focus, though, as the Combined Joint Task Force, is ISIL. And so don't forget that. That's our focus. The cessation of hostilities, the diplomatic and political processes, while they certainly are of interest to us and potentially could influence our operations peripherally, our focus remains ISIL.
Thanks, Steve.
Steve, has this been a significant uptick just recently, or is this the uptick that you've been talking about for weeks?
Right. It's the one. It's just been kind of, but it's kind of moving up. Right. It's a gradual increase. So, last week a little bit more than 2 weeks ago, which was a little bit more than 3 weeks ago. So it is, kind of an incremental uptick or increase.
Tolga's next.
Hi, Colonel. This is Tolga. I had two quick questions regarding the Maryland.
Tolga, move closer to the phone.
Okay. So first question on the offensive of the opposition groups in west of Azaz. It seems that there is no any coalitionary support for these groups who are fighting against ISIL in the west of Azaz and alongside the Syrian-Turkish border. Is there any particular reason? Is there any? There is no any group that you are cooperating with there?
Well, I don't have a list of groups, Tolga. We are cooperating and providing support for the moderate Syrian opposition forces that we are in contact with. You have to keep in mind there are hundreds of these small bands and groups of fighters. We're not in contact with every one of them. Similarly, some that we are in contact with don't meet our fundamental vetting standards, so we won't support them. So I don't know which group you're talking about, Tolga. I do know that we are, broadly speaking, providing support to the moderate Syrian opposition as they fight ISIL.
Okay, and the second one on the Kurdish groups in Maryland. As you know, the Afrin Kurds have now reached to the ISIS boundaries in the Mali line, and they are ready to attack ISIS. And on the other side, alongside the Euphrates River, just east part of the Manbij pocket, they're also ready to attack Manbij. And since you mentioned about to close the gap, the last part along the Syrian-Turkish border, did you make any decision about to support Kurdish fighters, especially Afrin Kurds in this Manbij pocket?
Not yet.
Okay. Is there any timeline or any particular reason for this?
So we're still working through all of this. I don't have a timeline to give you, Tolga, unfortunately, but we are still working through it. There are, as you know, several competing sets of sensitivities that have to be managed. That's being worked really at the political and diplomatic level. We would like to see, at the end of the day, the Manbij pocket closed. So, there's a lot of work going on at the diplomatic and at the political level, as well as at the military level, to try and get all the players into a place where they're comfortable closing off this pocket.
Got it. Thanks. Andrew Tillman.
Colonel Warren, on the one of the accelerants in terms of putting advisors on the brigade and battalion level, can you just tell us how you think that's going to play out from here? Have you identified particular brigades and battalions that will be receiving advisors? Roughly, how many do you think? Would it be all of them up there in the Mosul area? What you described as 8 to 12 brigades and their underlying battalions, or would it be more selective than that?
Yeah, so too soon to tell. We're working now the plan. I think what you'll see is an as-needed situation. So, as advisors are required with certain brigades, that's what you'll see. But it's very early right now, and we are kind of continuing to develop exactly what this is going to look like. Mosul is still.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, Mosul still.
What is as?
Go ahead, you go.
What is as needed? Can you describe like the scenario that would make a brigade or a battalion need a set of advisors?
So Mosul's still several steps away. So the first thing we have to do is set the conditions in order to get us into Mosul. Was what I was trying to say. I'm not going to make up kind of made up scenarios that don't exist yet. What I'll say is that as units, as we assess that units could use the help of advisors and assisters, or as the Iraqis request, specific units receive advice, more targeted advice, then that's what we'll do. But I'm not going to spin some kind of yarn that imagines a scenario. What I'll say is that as the Iraqi security forces begin their movements, there will be times when those forces would benefit from the type of advice and assistance that American and coalition advisors can provide. And as those opportunities and requirements arise, we'll fill them. Remember, this is authorities, right? I was very careful about reading that. This is authorities to push these advisors and assisters to brigade and battalion level. So this is a decision that now the commanders here on the ground can make at the time and the place of our choosing.
Jamie McIntyre.
Colonel Warren, it's Jamie McIntyre. Two questions. One about the B-52s, and I know we're dealing with perceptions here, but because these planes are older and bigger than the B-1s, are they in any way more vulnerable to ground attack? For instance, given the reports that there may be shoulder-fired missiles in the region. Question number one. And then question number two, more broadly about the civilian casualty question. There have been some reports suggesting that the rules of engagement have shifted somewhat in order to provide more latitude, and that might permit for more civilian casualties. Can you help us understand what's really going on with that?
Sure. Jamie McIntyre, who do you work for now?
I work for the authoritative Washington Examiner.
Excellent. Okay, well, that's good. That is an authoritative paper, so glad to hear it. Okay, yeah. B-52s and vulnerability, they are not more vulnerable than the other platforms that we've got operating in this theater, and of course we take all of the precautions that we can. Force protection is always our top priority here, and certainly protecting the force that mans the B-1 bomber falls into that category. On the CIVCAS and ROE, so I think then there was some recent reporting that the rules of engagement or the rules for how we handle CIVCAS have changed. Here's what's happened. The authority to accept risk has been delegated to a lower level. So when this fight began 20 months ago, the four-star general in Tampa, the Central Command commander, retained the authority to be the person who decides how much we're willing to risk a civilian casualty. Since that time, and as this theater has matured, as our systems have developed, as our processes have gotten better, those authorities have been delegated down to a lower level. They've been delegated down to our level here at the CJTF. So rather than the CENTCOM commander having to approve a strike that carries the risk of civilian casualties, now the CJTF commander, or in some cases the CJTF deputy commander, has the authority to make a decision on that risk, on whether or not the strike that we are planning to take, if there's risk of a civilian casualty associated with that strike, the decision level is now here at the CJTF. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so quick follow-up. So to change the threshold for approving such strikes, and do you anticipate that this moving the decision closer to the battlefield would risk an increase in civilian casualties?
Well, it's a war, so there's always the risk of civilian casualties. Let's be very clear about that. And in fact, there have been some civilian casualties. But this does not translate to more civilian casualties. This translates to a more rapid execution of strikes, because we don't have to send requests all the way to Tampa anymore. We can, in some cases, we can do it here. So the way we do this is, we try to figure out what we think. We find a target, we assess the military value of that target, and then we assess whether or not we think if we strike that target, there might be the possibility of a civilian casualty associated with that strike. If we think there won't be any civilian casualties, based on a very extensive and thorough analysis, we hit it. If we think there may be civilian casualties, then we go through a very detailed and painstaking process to determine, A, how many civilian casualties we think might result from the destruction of that target, and what we can do to drive that number, that possible number of civilian casualties, down to the smallest possible number, as close to zero as we can get. And if we can make adjustments, for example, what time we strike the target, drop leaflets ahead of striking the target, use a different type of munition, attack from a different type of angle. If we can make all those adjustments, and based on our extraordinary knowledge and sophistication, have a reasonable belief that there will be zero civilian casualties, again, we strike it. If, after we've made all of our adjustments, we still believe that there's a possibility of a civilian casualty occurring, well then that requires somebody of greater authority to approve that strike. And the authority level lies with the number of civilian casualties we believe may be associated with that strike. So I think that's the whole story. But at the end of the day, zero civilian casualties has to be our goal. That's our goal. We understand that there are going to be times when tragedies happen and the worst happens. But that is certainly not our goal. Our goal is to not, we are here to help the Iraqi people. We are here to help the Syrian people. And so with that in mind, we do everything we can to not hurt them.
One last clarification. When did this change of authority take place? When it was shifted from CENTCOM to theater?
It's happened over time, so it's been incremental. So, again, as our systems develop, as our higher headquarters starts seeing the same type of target set come up, over time they'll say, okay, well, in this case, we're going to delegate the authority. You don't need to show us that anymore. For example, I don't know, oil trucks, right? So if we hit a certain target type repeatedly, over time, the higher headquarters may delegate down that target type. So it's been an ongoing, I think, process.
Okay, next to Brian Everstein.
Hi, Brian Everstein, Air Force Magazine. Back to the B-52s. You wanted to talk about the precision of these strikes. Can you say what type of weapons were released on Monday? And in addition to the B-52 deployment, we've seen other new deployments of A-10s from Idaho, F-16s from Germany. Does this represent an uptick in the aircraft that are available to the coalition, or is this just normal rotations and stuff the same?
It's both. So we have seen, for example, the Dutch have just sent an additional 7 or is it the Danes? Was it the Danes? Sorry, the Danes have just sent additional F-16s into the fight. These are new. This is new added capability. You just saw obviously the EA-6B Prowlers that are moving into Incirlik. This is on top of what we already had. This isn't a replacement. Other times it is replacement. So it's a combination of both. On the exact munition type that the B-52 delivered in Kiara, Iraq, I don't have that. We can try to get. I don't know if we released that or not. I'll check with AFCENT though, and I'll send the info. I'll send the answer back through Matt Allen or Roger.
Next to Jamie Crawford.
Hi, Colonel. I just had 2 quick questions. Clarification on the HVT operation you spoke about on that took place on Sunday. Was the target, did you say, was he captured or killed? And then following up on the Captain Grimm operation, can you just elaborate a little more on where he was based and what the target was in Denmark that he identified? Is there just anything more you can provide his role in this?
So on the HVI, I didn't say if he was killed or captured. Let me get. So I've got the citation here that was developed for him here. So this Captain Grimm did several things. Thing number one that he did was to help develop a system to speed the flow of intelligence from here on the ground out to national capitals. So that was a real benefit to the various national capitals. The other thing he did was he provided some actionable intelligence, and that included information taken from exploited captured documents on enemy foreign fighters who were from Denmark or who had relatives in Denmark, as well as some cyber information on possible terrorist threats to Denmark. This included one instance where the information provided on a bomb threat against a school using homemade explosives in Denmark. And the information that Captain Grimm was able to provide contributed to an arrest and to the confiscation of these homemade explosives. So Captain Grimm, at the time he was given the award, had provided 250 tailored reports, compiled from reports and information which were releasable to Denmark. And so this ensured the flow of reclassified as permitted material for NATO use. So he did all this voluntarily, kind of in addition to his duties. He was based in Al-Assad while he was doing all of this. So I wanted to highlight it because it's not every day an American captain receives a very, I think, high and prestigious medal from a foreign country. And I wanted to highlight it, too, because it's important to me to remind everyone who's listening how very seriously we take the threat of external ops. This is top of our mind. So as we conduct operations, as we partner with our Iraqi partners, we are continuously working with them to try and draw out any tidbit of information that we can find that relates in any way to an external attack or an external operation that ISIL is planning. And when we find such information, we'll do one of two things. We will move that information where it needs to go to help protect the homeland. Two, and from our perspective, just as important, is we will find whoever it is that is plotting this external attack, and we will take immediate and violent action.
Lucas.
Colonel Warren, did General Votel make this order to shift or delegate authorities from CENTCOM down to CJTF level?
Now, this happened over time, really from September, really all the way up through now. I mean, like I said, it's kind of an ongoing process. I think the most significant delegation of authority was in October, but this is a continuing process.
Understood. And has this sped up the decision-making process overall to bomb targets?
It has. The more authorities that are delegated down, the more rapid we're able to respond, frankly, on these targets. And that's just a factor of, there's time and distance. It's much easier for the, commander on the ground who has nothing else to worry about than the fight and who is completely soaked in the daily operations to be able to assess the risk value, the risk reward assessment on a target, rather than have to bring a higher level headquarters located thousands of miles away who have significantly larger scope and set of responsibilities, so who are focused on many things: Afghanistan, Yemen, all of this CENTCOM AOR. So, of course, I mean, it's natural that this would speed up the process, and so it has.
And of the 217 new troops that were announced this week will go to Iraq, can you provide us a breakdown of those forces?
Well, I'm not going to give you a specific breakdown. What I'll tell you is that these new personnel will provide aviation support, some force protection, some HIMARS, field artillery support. So these are the individuals and then some advise and assist. So these are the individual people associated with the other accelerants, right? The accelerants are advise and assist to a lower level. So some people will go do that. It's Apache helicopters. So some people will go do that. It's HIMARS. So some people will go do that. And that's it.
Can you give us a breakdown of the services involved?
Well, we don't even have that.
Marine.
Yeah, that doesn't exist yet. So we're working through those processes now to do fills and force generation of our own. So that's coming, but we don't even have it yet.
Thank you.
Next to Nancy.
Hi, Steve. I wanted to follow up on two areas that you talked about. On the decision to move the strike decision to the commander and deputy commander, is it fair to say, I just want to make sure I understand correctly, that that decision no longer lies in CENTCOM, or any of those decisions made out of CENTCOM, or are they all exclusively in theater?
They're not all exclusively in theater, so it's levels. So it's how many civilians we believe are potentially at risk. And we're very deliberate not to give out the numbers.
Sure.
But if it's 0 civilian casualties, then somebody can approve it. If it's 1 civilian casualty, somebody else can approve it, and on up the line. So at some point, there's a cut line where it does have to go back to Tampa.
And is there any discussion of moving that decision-making process lower down to, say, General Volesky's level, particularly as you move more troops in, closer to where Iraqis are fighting, for example, in the battle towards Mosul? Is it possible that we'll see that decision made at a lower level, particularly as you move closer to Mosul?
Well, sure. I mean, there's a one-star general now who works for General Volesky and the CJOC who can approve some targets. So again, this is a rolling thing, right? The same way that Central Command over time decided to delegate down to the CJTF. Then over time, the CJTF can further delegate in some cases. In some cases, we receive the authorities with caveats that say there's no further delegation authorized, but those are rare.
Okay. And then one of the things that you said is that we're still several steps away from Mosul. Are one of those steps Fallujah? We've heard earlier about a potential offensive in Fallujah. Is that still a possibility, and is that considered one of those steps towards Fallujah?
Well, Fallujah is certainly something that is talked about here every single day. There's acute awareness of the humanitarian suffering that's going on in that town, and the Iraqis are very much focused on the idea of liberating Fallujah. Where the liberation of Fallujah falls in the sequence of events, frankly, has not yet been determined. There's continued discussion about that throughout the coalition and the Iraqi chains of command. So this is ongoing. Fallujah will be liberated eventually, as we hope will every square inch of Iraqi soil be free of ISIL.
Thank you.
Let's see here. Next is Gordon.
Colonel Warren, I may have missed it during the announcement, but do we know the timing of the arrival of the 217?
We don't, Gordon. They'll flow in over time. Some are already here. Obviously, the Apaches are already here. So, yeah, they'll flow in over time.
And can you tell us what the current number of forces are in Iraq right now?
Stand by.
He asked for the current number of forces in Iraq.
Got it. Stand by. I'm looking it up.
He didn't hear it.
Give me a sec.
Oh, sorry. My mistake.
So on April 15th, it was 3,350 was our FML fill.
So my real question is, as you know, and as thanks to some of our colleagues here, there's a difference between the public number and the number that's actually there in Iraq because they're on temporary status or whatever. A, can you give us the number, recognizing that it fluctuates? Can you give us the number of the temporary folks? And also, has there been any more thought to the Pentagon just providing that number as a matter of course, the full number?
No to both.
Can I ask why?
You can.
Can you give us an answer?
Gordon, I got to tell you, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs was very eloquent at his last press conference there in the Pentagon in the briefing room as to what we're doing and why. And there's really nothing I can add to that. I feel like he summed it all up in 2 sentences much more efficiently than I'm able to do. So I would refer you to his, the Secretary of Defense, or the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs' recent comments.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Paul.
Colonel Warren, hi, Paul Schenkman of U.S. News. Just a couple clarifying questions. On the 217, I know that you can't comment on where these troops are specifically coming from, but that's an awfully specific number. So can you say, are there 217 specific troops or specific kinds of troops that you have in mind, and you haven't figured out where they're coming from, or do you know and just can't say? Can you give us a better understanding on this?
So everything hasn't been resourced yet. There's a process for how we resource through the United States military, how we resource requirements, the request for forces process. You could spend about a week in a school down at Fort Belvoir and probably still not understand that process, but it's very specific. But the number 217 and the reason it's interesting to everyone, so it's based on units, right? So a HIMARS, battery by doctrine has X number of people in it. An Apache maintenance crew, by the book, has Y number of people in it. So as we figure out what our requirements are, okay, we need this many Apaches with this many maintainers and this many fuel handlers. We just look at the book and see what it says. We may not actually get that many people. Very few units are, at 100% fill all the time. At least no unit I've ever been assigned to has been like that. But that's where the number comes from. The number simply comes from opening up the book and seeing how many people are by the book assigned to, a HIMARS battery. And if it's 28, then we write down 28. And that's how we get our number.
So it may not be that 217 ultimately go. That's just the new cap on how many could go?
That's a good question, a very smart question. 217 is the doctrinal number associated with the amount of force that we have requested.
And then on the civilian casualties, can you confirm how many confirmed civilian casualties there have been so far, how many requests for investigation there have been, and how many active investigations there are?
I'm going to have to flip through my book here. If I recall, it's roughly 26 civilian casualties that we have announced. As you know, CENTCOM makes these announcements. I believe that there are a handful of civilian casualties that have not yet been announced, that we'll announce eventually when it gets through the whole process. So these are investigations that are complete, and we have determined that there have been some casualties, but haven't gotten all the way through the checking and rechecking and people signing the paperwork, etc. So those will be announced when ready. And then there are a handful of investigations that are ongoing right now. So that's where we are. I don't have numbers to give out associated with the second and third category I just described. My sense is the numbers are very low, though. I mean, it's after 20 months and 40,000 weapons releases, we're certain, or we've completed investigations that lead us to believe that their preponderance of evidence indicates that there have been 26 civilian casualties. And that's, remarkable by anyone's standard. And so I think that that remarkable level of precision will continue. So as these handful of investigations that are virtually complete but not yet prepared for release, as they come out, I think they're going to look an awful lot like what you've seen thus far. 1 here, 2 there. All tragic. All we wish we could have avoided them. But nevertheless remarkable in their, in how small they are.
And then lastly, just to sort of follow up on this gradual shift in the authorities, isn't the fact that there are strikes, by virtue of the fact that strikes can happen more quickly and that you can take advantage of dynamic targets more readily,
casualties raises just by virtue of the fact that there are more strikes?
No. It's like when you flip a coin, does the chance that it'll come up heads change because you've already flipped it twice? I'm no statistician, but I mean, to me, every single target gets the same amount of rigor, the same level of standards applied to it, the same amount of effort applied to drive the civilian casualty to zero.
All right, Tom? Yeah, sorry, just a quick follow-up on that point. Can you help me understand, if you're removing layers of scrutiny from this decision, then how is it that the threshold for a strike wouldn't be more likely to result in civilian casualties?
Well, it doesn't remove a layer of scrutiny. All it does is delegate the weight of decision to a different individual.
So, okay, but I mean, it was going higher up the chain of command, and now it's lower down. That would suggest a lower level of scrutiny.
I disagree. I think General McFarland applies excruciating scrutiny to every single target.
All right. Anything else? Yeah, Louis.
One quick clarifier, Chief. The delegation is only to the commander and deputy commander of CJTF, or does it go lower than that?
It goes lower.
Yep. Lucas.
Colonel, maybe just one more clarification. The delegation has gone down, but has the ROE changed, or the number of acceptable civilian losses, has that changed?
No, the number of acceptable civilian losses is always at zero. And then commanders have to make the decision as to whether or not the military value of the target justifies the possibility that some civilians may be killed.
Thank you.
All right, last call. Thanks, everybody.